Rain had already soaked through Marcus Hale's jacket when he noticed the small shape sitting alone on the curb. The streetlight above flickered weakly, painting the empty road in pale yellow, and for a moment he thought his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. But the shape moved. A tiny girl no older than 6 hugged her knees beside a closed grocery store, her pink shoes splashed with mud and her face streaked with tears. Marcus stopped walking. He had just finished a long shift at a repair shop across town, his body aching and his mind heavy with the endless worries of a single father. His 8-year-old son, Jacob, was waiting at home with a neighbor who watched him during late shifts. Life had been a constant balancing act ever since Marcus's wife passed away 3 years earlier. Bills stacked like mountains, grief that never truly left, and the quiet fear of failing the only child who depended on him. But none of that mattered in that moment, because the little girl sitting alone in the rain looked like the loneliest soul in the world. Marcus slowly approached, careful not to scare her. Up close, he saw her trembling shoulders and wide, frightened eyes. Her small fingers clutched a stuffed rabbit so tightly its ears were twisted. He crouched down gently. Sometimes life throws moments at you that don't come with instructions. Standing there in the rain, Marcus felt the weight of that question settle into his heart. What if this had been your child? What if your own little one was lost somewhere in the dark while strangers passed by? Would you keep walking? Marcus couldn't. He wrapped his jacket around the girl's shoulders and carried her home through the rain. His small house on the edge of Cedar Falls wasn't much. Old wooden floors, creaky steps, and a couch that had seen better days. But it was warm. Jacob looked up from the living room floor in surprise when his father stepped in holding the drenched little stranger. Within minutes, the girl sat wrapped in a blanket with a cup of hot cocoa trembling in her hands. Her name, they eventually learned through soft whispers and sniffles, was Sophie. She didn't know where she lived. She didn't know her mother's phone number. All she knew was that she had wandered away from a park while chasing a butterfly, and by the time she looked up, the world around her had become unfamiliar and frightening. Marcus called the local police station and reported finding her. They told him officers were searching for a missing child already reported earlier that evening. Until they arrived, they asked him to keep her safe. And so the small house that had once felt painfully quiet suddenly filled with something unexpected. Life. Jacob brought out his toy dinosaurs to cheer Sophie up. Marcus found dry clothes from Jacob's younger years. Slowly, the tears stopped. The fear faded. For the first time in a long while, laughter echoed through Marcus's living room. But none of them knew that somewhere across the city, chaos was unfolding. Sophie's mother, Victoria Langford, was one of the wealthiest women in the state. Her business empire stretched across tech companies and real estate developments, and her name appeared regularly in magazines and news articles. Yet none of that power mattered when she realized her daughter had disappeared. For 6 hours, the city searched. Police cars scanned neighborhoods. Helicopters swept through the night sky. Victoria's heart broke with every passing minute. Then, just after midnight, a patrol officer knocked on Marcus's door. The officer stepped inside, confirming Sophie's identity with a relieved smile. But before anyone could say much more, another car pulled up outside. A black luxury sedan. Marcus watched through the window as a woman stepped out. Even in the dim porch light, her presence carried quiet power. Yet her movements were rushed, almost desperate as she hurried toward the door. Victoria Langford wasn't the composed billionaire the world knew. She was just a terrified mother. When the door opened and she saw Sophie safe inside, something inside her shattered. Tears fell instantly as she rushed forward, dropping to her knees and pulling her daughter into her arms. The relief in that room felt almost sacred. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Marcus stood quietly near the kitchen doorway, watching the reunion with a strange heaviness in his chest. Seeing that mother hold her child so tightly reminded him of a life he had lost, of hospital rooms, silent prayers, and the moment doctors told him his wife wasn't coming home. Victoria eventually stood and turned toward Marcus, still holding Sophie's hand. Her eyes were red, her voice fragile with gratitude. She looked around the modest house, taking in the worn furniture, the peeling paint, and the small signs of a man doing everything he could to raise a child alone. The contrast between their worlds couldn't have been sharper, but kindness has a strange way of leveling everything. Victoria tried to offer money, a reward, something large enough to repay what Marcus had done. Marcus simply shook his head. He hadn't brought Sophie home because of money. He had done it because no child deserved to feel abandoned in the rain. Victoria looked at him for a long time after that, her expression slowly shifting from gratitude to something deeper, respect. Before leaving, she noticed Jacob standing quietly near the hallway, watching everything unfold with curious eyes. A few soft questions revealed Marcus's reality. The long work hours, the struggle to keep up with rent, the constant effort to give Jacob a normal life despite the loss of his mother. Victoria left that night with her daughter. Marcus assumed that was the end of it. But the next morning there was another knock on his door. When he opened it, Victoria stood there again. This time she wasn't dressed like a billionaire executive. No assistants, no cameras. Just a mother who hadn't forgotten the man who protected her child. She carried two things. One was a large envelope. The other was a simple promise. Inside the envelope was a scholarship trust for Jacob's future education, enough to carry him through college without debt. Along with it came something Marcus had never expected, an offer to help him open his own auto repair business, giving him the stability he had always dreamed of but never been able to afford. Victoria explained that some debts couldn't truly be repaid, but gratitude could still change lives. Marcus stood speechless. In a single night, the kindness of a tired single father had rewritten the future for his son. And perhaps that is the quiet truth life sometimes hides from us. The smallest decisions, the ones we make when nobody is watching, can ripple further than we ever imagine. A man walking home in the rain, a child sitting alone on a curb, a door opened, and suddenly 3 lives changed forever. So before this story ends, take a moment to tell me something in the comments. If you had found that little girl alone in the rain, would you have stopped? And if this story touched your heart even a little, please consider liking the video, sharing it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribing to the channel. Because sometimes the smallest stories remind us of the biggest truths about being human. Red.